too fancy. If I don't get it, I know my voice will go.
There's cough drops up here too.
Okay, hopefully we don't have to go that far, but.
Adjust this mic.
Okay. All right. And so I'm plugged in. I just haven't turned it back. You want me to turn it on or?
Good evening, everyone. At the end of the lecture, we're going to be raffling off a book.
Okay.
And in order to qualify for the
All right,
raffle, you have to have a green ticket with a number. Anybody's welcome to green ticket. You don't have to have attended the dinner or anything. Mark has the tickets, so anybody who does not have a green ticket, raise their hand and we will pass them out.
I'll take it. Yeah, it's a little hard.
We have sort of a crude system broadcasting on YouTube.
Yeah.
That sort of forces us to try to start on time.
Well, ready to go, whatever. How many people do you get online?
I don't know, guys.
Anybody else? Anybody else?
Okay, folks, everybody here has a green ticket. If you don't have a green ticket, raise your hand. We will be starting at 7. As many of you may know, we broadcast live on YouTube, and because of that, we try to structure this so we start on time, not early, not late. So we'll be starting the lecture at 7 o'clock. Okay. My name is Alex Pavlak. I'm the program director for the Chesapeake chapter. I want to thank you all for attending our lecture this evening. And I want to thank Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory for providing our facilities, or providing the facilities that we are using. Tonight's lecture is going to be on the neural prosthetics and advanced robotics. I want to thank all of our guests for attending. How many folks here are from IEEE? If you could raise your hand. We got a very good turnout. Anyone from the University of Maryland Robotics Center? One. Okay, good. Great. Okay, I want to remind you all that we are broadcasting live on YouTube. This means that if you have any questions, please hold them till the end and wait until we're able to get a microphone to you so that everybody can hear your question. So with that out of the way, why don't we get started? I'd like to introduce Mike McLoughlin, and the show is yours.
Great, thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. It's great to be here tonight and tell you a little bit about what I've been doing over the past 5 or 6 years, which has been, we were talking over dinner about kind of the path your career takes, and this was something I ended up doing. It was kind of completely out of left field. You know, I'm an electrical engineer, and you know, I ended up leading a program with a bunch of neuroscientists in it, and you know, biomedical engineers and so forth. So it's actually nice for a change to actually be able to talk to a room full of engineers. And not that I don't like neuroscientists, but you know, it's always nice to kind of talk to the people that have a very similar background. And so what I'd like to do tonight is share with you some of what we've done in this program. And also maybe some of the, you know, the lessons learned and things that have happened along the way that, you know, particularly, you know, from a systems engineering perspective are extremely important. And systems engineering ultimately, as you look at what happened in this, and is happening in this program, it's really what made it successful. Okay, there was a lot of great science. A very strong systems effort that brought this all together. So I'd like to start and, you know, kind of back at the beginning of this story. So this program started about 10 years ago, and it was in response to what was happening in the Middle East. And at that time, the Iraqi war was in full swing, and the US military had been very successful in reducing casualties on the battlefield. So if you survive the first hour after an injury, your chances of surviving were about 98%. And so that was remarkable, and it was better than any other conflict you know, the country has ever been in our history. But one of the challenges was that as we had better body armor, better trauma care in the field, we saw a higher percentage of injuries with, you know, fairly significant consequences. So burns, traumatic head injuries, and amputations. Okay, so we protected the torso, but it's the extremities, involvement in the extremities that created a challenge. So, and if you remember hearing, you know, a number of years ago, the concerns about Walter Reed, and they weren't handling, and you know, the reason was they just didn't expect to get as many people coming, you know, casualties coming back as they received. And so, you know, it's good news that we're able to save a lot of these young men and women, but it also leaves us with a terrific responsibility to help them recover. Because you have to remember, most of them are, you know, young adults, so 18, 19, 20 years old. So they have, you know, a lot of years ahead of them. And, you know, the character of the men and women in our military today is they don't want to just sit on disability for the rest of their lives. You know, they want to get back in it and be a contributing member of society. And so that's really what motivated this program. And if you look at what's happened in the world of prosthetics, you think about it, we've seen examples of people with lower limb amputations doing all kinds of things, running, biking, rock climbing, playing basketball. They're able to integrate their prosthetic legs into a wide variety of activities, okay? To the point where sometimes people argue that, you're wearing prosthetic legs, so you have an unfair advantage, okay? And which is really remarkable that somebody would argue that, right? But when it comes to upper extremity prosthetics, the most popular prosthetic is actually no prosthetic, okay? Because many amputees just don't feel it's worth the trouble to wear it, okay? The second most popular prosthetic is a hook. And that's a technology which has been around for 100 years. It's not much different than what you would have gotten in the Civil War, okay? And so DARPA wanted to change that. And what they wanted to do was develop an upper extremity prosthetic that could not only do everything that you can do with your natural hand. So you think about what your hand and arm can do. It's really a remarkable piece of engineering. And if you think about what you do with this, as you do, very complex things, you don't really think much about it, okay? I'm moving my hands and, balancing this and not even thinking about it, okay? So not only do we had to build this arm, but we also had to figure out a way to actually control it, right? And that means taking what we do very naturally and somehow capturing that and enabling us to control the arm. So what we really wanted to do was to tap into the brain, okay? Because if I've suffered an amputation, or if I've had a spinal cord injury and I'm paralyzed and I can no longer move my arms, when I think about moving my limbs, those neurons in my brain still fire. They just can't get to the arm, either because it's not there or because the connection's broken, okay? And so what we really wanted to be able to do is restore that connectivity. We also wanted to run it the other way, which means that, if you touch an object, you'd really like to be able to feel it, okay? We've all had, dental surgery done, and we haven't talked, and that's because your brain loses that feedback and you don't know, what the muscles are doing and so forth. And so you really like to restore that capability. And so very compelling set of challenges here. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we address that. So first I'd like to kind of just show you the top level diagram of what we're doing. So if we have somebody that's suffered limb loss, as I mentioned, the neurons in the brain are still firing. And it's quite amazing. Somebody that's, even 20, 30, 40 years after an amputation, those signals are all still there, okay? The brain remembers that the arm was there. So what we wanted to do was to actually insert some electrodes, and these are small arrays. They're about 2 millimeters square, have about 100 electrodes on them, and actually sit on the surface of the brain. So now when those signals fire in the brain, we can actually hear them, okay? And then we can record those signals, and that gives us patterns, which we can then look at those patterns and determine what the intent was, okay? And from that intent, then we can convert that into what we call a motor decode, which then tells the arm what to do, okay? And so that causes the arm to move. To restore sensory perception, we can do just the exact opposite of that. So now that, this arm has sensors on it, and when it interacts with an object, it touches something, it senses pressure, senses vibration, and we can take those signals and then we can encode them. So they look something like this over here, but in a way that the brain will perceive as perception, so that we can then stimulate a different area of the brain with a very similar set of electrodes and create a artificial sensation. And so we call that closed loop cortical control. Tim Heems, and you can go on the internet and learn more about Tim. And he was injured in a motor vehicle accident. But he's controlling that arm by just thinking about it. Okay, so he's thinking about is where he's positioning the arm. And remember, this is after a day of working with it. And so he was able to high five his doctor there. And his girlfriend's watching this, and she says, you know, I'd like to try that too. So she got up and you know, was able to do the same thing. And I mean, you can tell just looking at the facial expressions that this was a huge moment for both of them. And when Tim talks about his experience, he says, I reached out with my arm. Okay. And those are his exact words. I reached out with my arm. And so he really had this sense of this was him reaching out to touch somebody. You know, this wasn't a machine. Okay. I mean, he knew it was a machine, but that wasn't the way he perceived it. And that's after a day. So we wondered, okay, that's pretty good. So, you know, suppose we had longer, and that was the next step in the program. So we then started with working with a second patient, also up at the University of Pittsburgh, and her name's Jan Sherman. You know, so one of the interesting sides of this program is it generated a lot of interest, and so we ended up having 60 Minutes come in and wanting to do a piece on it. And you know, I was a lot younger in my career. You know, the thought was, well, 60 Minutes showed up, you know, you were in trouble. But you know, that was a long time ago. But you know, it was really really something great. And so I'm going to play a short clip here of Scott Pelley interacting with Jan, and I want you to kind of listen to the dialogue here, because it's very very profound.
I can move it up.
two arms pan. The remarkable thing is that, numbers years after amputation, the brain still remembers that nerve used to go to the finger, and when you stimulate it, the brain says, hey, the finger's back. Okay. And so I'm going to play another short clip here for the 60 minutes
many
piece.
who could use the robot arm are not paralyzed like Jan. They're amputees, and for them, the project has found a way to connect the arm without brain surgery. 57-year-old Johnny Mathney lost his arm to cancer. Dr. Albert Chi from Johns Hopkins Hospital found the nerves that used to go to Johnny's hand and moved them to healthy muscles in his remaining limb.
Now, elbow extension.
Sensors on his skin pick up the brain signals from the nerves and use those signals to control the robotic arm.
Come here, I want to see you.
So even though the limb is missing, the brain still sends the signals as if the limb was still there.
Correct.
Johnny, it feels in your mind like your hand is there again?
Yes.
As if your arm had never been lost.
Correct.
Unlike Jan, the connection for Johnny runs both ways. Sensors in the fingers send signals back so he can feel what he's touching. Okay, I'm holding the object. You can close on it to see how well we put him to the test. Hard or soft?
Soft.
Correct. Very good. Now let's try again. I'm holding the object. Hard or soft?
Soft.
Yeah, quite right. All right. He got it right every time. Hard or soft?
Okay, so to give you a sense of, again, the ability to kind of restore this natural sensation. So, this side of it, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of very early on, but it really shows, I think, great promise of what can be done in the future. The interesting thing about TMR is as time goes on, the nerves, which grow very slowly, tend to grow more and more. So over time, he's actually gotten more sensory capability than he had when that particular segment was shot about a year and a half ago. And I want to show one last case here. So this is somebody that contacted me probably about a year and a half ago, interested in TMR surgery, and I referred her to Albert Chi, and she came in and we said, well, we're just going to hook some electrodes to you and just see what you can do. And Albert had actually scheduled her for the surgery, and she came in and she started, moving the hand and the fingers, and we were absolutely shocked because she shouldn't be able to do all of this. And when we talked to her, she said that when the doctor did her amputation, he said, so normally what happens is physicians are taught to basically pull the nerve tight and then cut it off short so you don't have a lot of extra nerve in there. And that's to try to reduce phantom limb pain. And this doctor said, you know, they're doing all kinds of neat things in prosthetics. You might need those nerves someday. So he kind of bunched them up and stuck them in there. And so she essentially had the effects of a targeted reinnervation surgery without ever actually having the surgery. And so, you know, this shocked all of us when this happened, and ended up canceling her surgery because of it. Really started, you know, Albert and some of his colleagues thinking about really changing the way, you know, we treat amputees today, so that, you know, we enable amputees at the time of an amputation to be able to use these types of systems without having to undergo a secondary surgery. Okay, so now let me go kind of the next step here and say that, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, either they don't want to have the brain implant, they're not, you know, they may have disabilities, but not quite at the level that we've seen with some of these folks. And we'd like them to be able to also utilize a prosthetic limb. So we started really looking at what could robotics technology do. So what are the ways that you or I could very easily interact with these systems without having to go, you know, undergo a surgical procedure. And so it really led us to start looking at non-invasive techniques. And so here's just a short video of somebody, one of our colleagues, who is controlling that robotic limb strictly by eye tracking. So he's moving his eyes around on the screen to tell the arm where he wants it to go. And so you can see that he can get quite a bit of control by doing nothing more than moving his eyes. And this turns out also to be something people can pick up pretty quickly. I mean, we know how to look at objects and follow things and so forth. We do that quite naturally. The other thing we wanted to do was say, okay, well, that's good for moving the arm around, but what do you do if you want to grasp an object? Because that's you know, now a little bit harder, okay? You know, how do we take that set of very complex motions and enable somebody to do it? And one of the things that we're looking at is automation, okay? So now in this case, we're now using a Connect system, okay, which is taking that visual scene and allowing a computer vision system to decompose that into the objects and then tell the arm where those objects are. So now in this case, what the arm is basically getting from the computer is, you know, here are the objects where they are, and then can reach and grasp the objects. Now remember, we also have sensors on the arm so that, you know, as the fingers touch an object, we get feedback from that. So we can actually tell if we're grasping the object or not. So, you know, depending on the shape of the object, you know, is it something thick, thin, we can adjust the grip accordingly. And you notice when it picked up that paper roll, it didn't, you know, crush it, and which the arm can do, okay? It's just, you know, it's about as strong as your hand, and you know, that's something that, you know, even I can do that. You know, it's able to adjust accordingly. So we can now start thinking about is combining these you know, methods of interfacing with the machine, so that, you know, as the user, you know, I can direct the arm where I want it to go, and, you know, then we can take advantage of automation to help do the things that are more complex, okay, but very tractable. So so we're good at as humans at making decisions, recognizing things. So if I told that computer, you know, pick up the basketball, it'd have a hard time doing that. But if I can use eye tracking to point out where you know, which of those objects is the basketball, then the computer can go pick the object up pretty easily. And that's, so, you know, again, the idea is to combine, you know, our human capability with the machine's capability in a way that draws out the best of both of them. And so this video shows you now putting those two things together. a patient who is now using a menu driven thing by a menu driven system using eye tracking to select out commands, and then is able to do things like now grab a cup so he can take a drink and bring it over to him. So you know, he's doing the high level command, telling it this is what I want you to do, and the system's figuring out how to actually execute that operation. Okay. So the next thing, you know, we thought about was, you know, okay, we have these highly dexterous limbs. We have lots of ways that we can control them. You know, what else are we going to do? You know, typical engineers, right? What else can we do here, right? And so we really thought about, you know, a lot of these soldiers got injured because, you know, they were in a dangerous area. You know, they were investigating a suspicious object, or, you know, secondary detonation after they started an investigation. You know, suppose we could put the robot in that scenario instead. So what we started doing, looking at ways that we could do that. So this is Robo Sally, and what Robo Sally has obviously is 2 arms, and these are the same prosthetics that you saw being used earlier. And you see on her head there, she has a set of cameras which give the operator stereo vision. So the person that's operating is off to the side somewhere, and they're watching basically the perspective of the robot, so they can actually see what the robot sees. So they can also wear those same motion capture systems you saw early on. Okay, so now you're seeing the perspective of the robot, so the operator can sit there in virtual space, okay, in a safe location, and, you know, be able to manipulate objects by moving their hands in the way they normally do. So they don't have to learn, you know, some complicated new way of doing something. And I could take anybody in this room and hook you up in this, and it'd take you about 2 minutes to figure out how to do it. You know, we've a number of times, you know, hooked people up that have never operated a robot before, and, you know, they're, you know, picking things up and moving around. And so we asked ourselves, you know, what other things that we might do. And we had 2 robots working together, Robo Sally and her, I don't know, her little brother, I guess, or something. But that second robot has a set of arms on it that were designed. So Robo Sally is designed to have human-like arms, okay? And the, let me just shut this off. What our partner company, a company called HDT, did was basically take the ARM technology, the motors and the electronic controllers and things, and ruggedize them, and scale them up a little bit. So they made a set of arms that could, lift artillery shells and other very, operate in military types environments. They don't look human, and they're not meant to look human, but they're based on the same technology, okay? And so in this case, we showed these two robots working together in order to save Randy there. And part of that clip was Robo Sally was putting on a neck brace, and they're clearing away rubble, and they're gonna put that poor guy on a backboard and get him out of harm's way there. But when we think about our challenges going forward here, the prosthetics market is actually a very small market. Okay, so there's probably from both Iraq and Afghanistan, probably about 300 soldiers who have lost upper limbs. Okay, so it's not a big number. And when you look across, there's probably 1 million or so amputees in the United States, and less than 100,000 of them are upper extremity. And so it's a very small market, and so there's not a big commercial driver for it. Okay, so for somebody to come in and make the investment in the prosthetic market, it's a very challenging business environment. However, when we think about other things robots can do, robots to assist around the home, emergency response robots, lots of applications we can see for that. So we really think that the future of a lot of this relies on the fact that we can use this technology across many different applications. So it's not just prosthetics. It really, enables us to allow people to interact with machines that can do human-like activities in a very natural way. And so it's, it enables us then to really start to envision that we can really begin to, to build the kind of the economies of scale that actually would ultimately make robotics such as these affordable to everybody. And so we're not there yet, but that's, that's where, we see this heading. So today, we think about, well, we have, people that make prosthetics, and we have people that make industrial robots and so forth. And I think in the future, we're going to see a lot of those applications overlap with one another. So it's just like, we used to have separate devices. We have a phone, you had something for your email, you had all these different devices. Now you have a smartphone that does all these things together. You don't have to carry around your navigation system and, a separate thing for getting, attaching to the internet and something else to talk. You got the same device. And I think it's the same type of thing here, that we'll be able to, ultimately kind of leverage, many of these technologies to, bring these markets together so that we'll be able to bring the cost down and make it more affordable to everybody. So that's, well, I do have one more thing I wanted to talk about. So the acknowledgements. As I mentioned, over the course of the 9 years of this program, we've had over 30 different organizations involved, and these are some of the ones that are recently involved in it. One of the things I've always enjoyed in my career is doing things that were very interdisciplinary, that crossed disciplinary lines, and that's what systems engineering is all about, right? And this has been, I think the most interdisciplinary thing I've ever done in my life, and it's hard for me to envision doing something that's going to bring in a wider range of skills than this. And so going back to what I said earlier, the systems engineering was the whole reason this effort was successful. And I think it has implications to where we go in the future, because when this program began, there were people that said, "Oh, I know how to decode signals from the brain." That's what you need to make a prosthetic. Okay, well, you needed a lot more than that. And somebody that did research on neurological signals wouldn't necessarily talk to somebody that's got expertise in building really small, high torque motors. And so we had to bring those types of things together in order to make this work. And we had to bring a lot of disciplines into this that typically, don't work in the domain of doing, thinking about systems engineering requirements and all the things that, we work with all the time. And that was one of the great challenges. But one of the things, we learned in this is that, when we think, we zoom out and we think about, our healthcare system today, what this taught us is that, there really is a really important role in systems engineering in kind of the broader healthcare system. And if you look at the way healthcare is delivered today, I mean, it is just, woefully inadequate in terms of the way that the systems are engineered. And so as a byproduct of this, we've since, been applying this same model in other areas in biomedical engineering and healthcare systems, and to which things that we think will ultimately, have, a significant impact. And so I think, as you all think about systems engineering and kind of the next generation, this is certainly an area that I think is, really in great need of really dedicated systems engineers. And so with that, I will wrap up and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mike. Round of applause. Okay, anyone with questions, raise your hand and we will pass you a microphone.
It's a fascinating presentation. Thanks very much, sir.
Thank you.
How do the electrodes really listen to the very complex stuff that is happening between the neurons, all the inhibitors and all the amplifiers and so on and so forth, all firing?
Sure. Great. Okay, so that's a great question. And so these electrodes are designed that they are basically insulated except for the very tips. And so the idea is that they are able to hear really only what's very close to them. So when you insert those electrodes, it's actually a procedure they go through to actually kind of sort out the various neurons that they're hearing in the population. They're able actually to pick out individual neurons. They're also capable of listening to groups of them. Okay, so there are multiple ways that you can actually analyze some of these signals. And it really is. We know from doing, say, a functional magnetic resonance imaging test, we know the general area that's involved, say, with hand motion, but we don't know the exact neurons. So what happens is that we get really a random sampling of neurons that are involved in the hand. And so what happens is that over the time, this is almost like watching somebody that's has had a stroke, and what they're learning how to do is kind of remap, function so that new neurons take over the activities. So as they kind of learn with the system, the neurons will kind of, remap themselves in order to control the arm. And so it's really, it's a very dynamic process. As one of the things we really need to do as this moves forward is to allow ourselves to get, higher bandwidth. So there's probably, moving your arm, there's probably 1 billion neurons involved in that. And, we see, 100 of them, maybe 200 of them. So we see a very small fraction of what's actually there. And so really the challenge is to be able to see a much broader array of these things. Sure.
Extraordinary work. Thank you for sharing this with us. I'd love to know a little bit about the process that you went through to assemble the team to define the competencies required to assemble and proceed with this project.
Yeah, so and that's actually been ongoing through the whole project. So my predecessor in this project, a guy by the name of Stuart Harshbarger, who originally put the the initial team together, really went out and looked at who were the best in the field, and he brought in a number of people, and over the first few years, some things worked, some things didn't. Okay, and then when I came in, when the program was about 3 or 4 years in, we looked at what was working and what wasn't, and we made some adjustments in the team. And so some people left the team, and we brought some new people in. And one of the, I think the real keys in being successful was, number one is that flexibility to be able to kind of change the composition of the team as we learned, because we didn't really know what we had to do up front. But the other thing was to we concentrated very hard on communication within the team, and in a way that so as systems engineers, most of you have regular progress meetings, and you get together, you go through designs and where you are and testing requirements and all these things. A lot of the portion of the team were not familiar with doing that. What they did was some research, and then they wrote some papers, and then they had some grants, and they go do some more research, and they write some more papers. Okay, and as soon as we said, well, what we need you to do is on this day, we need you to produce this item, deliver it. It was like, what? I got to write a paper, and so it was a real challenge for us in the team. So first of all, so a graduate student that's depending on being able to write papers and do their thesis and stuff, you can't say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't do that. You got a deliverable. So you got to, they need to be able to do that. But on the other hand, I have to have a deliverable. Okay. And so you kind of have to work both those things together. And what we found out was we really, about halfway through the program, changed the structure to put a lot more intensive on our part, kind of, I won't say supervision, but, really kind of keeping the communication going in order to kind of, so we knew where people were heading, and they knew what we needed them to do. And it had to do that more intensively than probably I would have had to do in say if I'd been doing something with an APL or, kind of more of a traditional engineering environment. So we really had to kind of adapt the way that we work, and it worked out great. People that, originally maybe didn't like the idea of having regular status, we actually found out it's a good thing to do. It actually helps. So, but it took a little while to actually do that. And, you make some mistakes along the way, but then you correct them. And I think that's what was one of the other important things is, not to let mistakes fester, but deal with them very quickly in a constructive way. And sometimes that meant, you're doing great work. We really like what you're doing, but it's just not what we need in this program. And, we're going to have to change the direction a little bit.
So, this question shifting a little bit more to the, I guess I'll say the system engineering side of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's highly interesting just thinking about a lot of aspects of this. But I'm just wondering, did you or whoever, like the lead system engineer or engineering team, create requirements, create models, create architecture, thinking about the signals aspect of it and computers and software as well as the hardware and all that aspect of it, and put that all together in a typical system engineering package of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have all those, requirements documents, testing specifications, the whole thing. That again, that's kind of another thing that we had, was tough to get, participants that weren't used to doing those kinds of things to do them. We put together a very rigorous set of documentation behind all of this because of the complexity of that arm is something that's, one of our colleagues in the space department said, hey, that's as complex as anything that, we've ever built. So it was a very intricate design. and you know, a very distributed team working on it. So yeah, it was very important, and that's why we did the virtual systems, because we really needed a way in order that, you know, if you're working on, you know, a particular component and you want to see how that component is interacting with the rest of the system, you needed a way to be able to study that and at least the first order before building hardware to see if everything was meshing right. And that turned out to be a very effective tool that that we've used throughout the program.
I was really impressed by how quickly the patients learned how to use the arm in the multiple videos you showed. I was wondering what was, so my sort of presumption is that a lot of that had to do with a sort of explicit effort on the part of the patient to move certain features of the arm and the hand and so forth, at least initially. And I'm wondering how long did it take for the patients to go from that explicit sort of feature movement to subordinating those movements to higher level objectives. Like I want to grasp this cup, therefore my arm has to move in this certain way, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I think, you know, a lot of what you saw was after probably a few months of training, and one of the challenges to this is the arrays that we use tend to degrade over time. So what happens is, you know, the body will build up scar tissue and start drowning out some of those signals. So what you tend to see is a curve where the effectiveness improves and then starts to roll off as the signals begin to degrade. So she was able to peak doing about 12 degrees of freedom of motion. And that's about as 10 or 12, and that was about as far as she was able to get. I think if you know, the integrity of the arrays had, you know, stayed flat, I think she probably would have continued to improve. But that's you know, that's just, you know, where we are with the technology today. So it's sort of like, you know, remember the old 300 baud modems, you know, dial-up modems you had? You know, that's kind of like what we have right now compared to, you know, cable internet access. So, you know, so we learned a lot. There's still a lot of questions, and you know, it's opened up. You know, so if one of the neuroscientists were up here giving this talk, they tell you, you know, about all the things that they've learned that they still have questions about that they've observed, you know, through this experiment. So, you know, I think we're just scratching the surface of this. You know, I always tell people this is kind of like, you know, the, you know, information technologies back in the 60s or something. You know, we've got, you know, very rudimentary tools right now. We've learned an awful lot from them, but as the tools get better, we're going to learn even more.
So I had a question. It's just the technology's phenomenal. Just kind of thinking forward and putting on an engineering hat. Could you discuss what type of thoughts have been given to self-diagnostics and system feedback to the user? If a potential actuator or something failed, actually also feeding back to the user somehow that something is wrong?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we certainly, you know, we measure a lot of information. So we know, you know, how hot the motors are. We know how much, you know, torque is on them. We know the positions that they're in. So we get a lot of self-diagnostics information, as well as we get sensory information, so pressure and vibration. So we've only, yeah, you know, we've only really just begun to look at how to use that information. So, you know, Johnny, for example, we were sending a, you know, at that time we're sending 2 or 3 channels back to him. Okay. So I think it's similarly with the motor side of it. You know, we have very limited data that we get out. We have even less that we know how to put back in yet. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, I really came to appreciate in this program was the human aspect of it. So for example, when we started the program, we thought, you know, we really need to make this look like a human arm. So we made this really nice cosmesis that, you know, had, you know, hair follicles on it and the whole thing and stuff. And the reaction to that was like, oh, that's kind of creepy. Okay. All right. And what we found, we talked to and it was, the limb was, the plastic components were flesh colored. But when we talked to this, the 20-year-old soldier, he said, hey, I like that cool black arm, right? And so I think, the thing that's so exciting about this is that we're able now to start asking those kinds of questions and start trying some of these things. And I think we're going to get a lot of surprises along the way when we find out what people like and what they don't like. And the really exciting thing is we can actually try it and see, because the human brain is so you think about this from a purely engineering standpoint. What I said was we take the area that controls the hand and we just plug an electrode in, and the brain sort of figures out how to work it, right? Now, could you imagine interfacing with a computer system that way? Well, I'll just clip on some wires here and yeah, it'll figure out how to work, right? That's probably not going to work out too well, okay? But we're able to do that. So there's just really just a wealth of things that we're just starting to understand here. And so it's a great question, and it's one that I think we're really excited to learn more about. And I think we're going to see a lot of surprises along the way.
Hi. By the way, it kind of reminded me of the old TV show, The $6 Million Man, with the bionic, stuff. Was kind of interesting. But could you comment on the? I could guess what it is, but modeling and simulation of your devices and your stuff versus building real prototypes and stuff. Mm-hmm. I presume you spent a tremendous amount of time in modeling and simuling these things, but could you talk about how that worked out and how that showed up in your program?
Yeah, so yeah, you're absolutely right. We did spend a lot of time on it. And in the beginning, it was an engineering tool, all right, so that we could work out how various pieces would work together before we actually had the hardware. So the first generation of that arm took us about 4 years to get to really the form it's in today. So we spent a lot of time in this program where we didn't really have the full up system, and so we used virtual systems and the simulation to do that. What we do today is we take that same system and we let some of the research participants work with it so they can take it home with them and they can practice. We also now license it out for research purposes. So we have about 20 different universities now that use that virtual system in their research laboratories, because that's an easy way for them to begin looking at various types of control methods with a virtual system, and a few of them now are starting to acquire the real systems. So it really has had a amazing breadth that we've been able to use modeling and simulation in this program. Yeah.
When you moved into the field, especially with RoboSally, did you have any latency challenges, and how did you overcome them as compared to when there was a brain implant? Yeah, so you do have some latency issues, and you want to keep latency down to like 50 milliseconds to, because then it doesn't, much more than that, it starts getting annoying. The limitations with RoboSally is really kind of external to the arms. So it's the communication links. It's the, we use some commercial systems for the motion capture, and those tend to be, not as latency free as we would like. So we have a little bit of issues with latency with RoboSally. I think that, it's part of the reason why we focus on the autonomy too, because we really don't want, ultimately what we don't want the person have to do is to actually control each finger. We like to be able to say is, okay, pick up that object and let the robot do it. And, when you think about things like, like space exploration, if you want to put, a remote system on Mars, you don't have the option of reducing latency, okay? So it becomes more important to have those types of automation capabilities built into the system. So again, in the long run, we really want to keep the operator focused on, the high level tasks, making the decisions, and really let the robot locally worry about, kind of the fine detail of actually how to execute something.
We'll take one more question, but before we do, I want to find out whether there's anyone here who does not have a green ticket. We're going to auction off a book, and in order to qualify for the auction, you need a green ticket, and Mark will be passing them around. So anybody who does not have a green ticket, raise your hand, and Mark will provide one for you. So we'll have one last question, and from the back of the room, someone new, okay?
How far are you from actually having a production unit?
Yeah, that's a good question. The challenge is at this point really isn't technology. It's really the business model. And so as I mentioned earlier, one of our challenges, the prosthetics market's not that big. So given that somebody come in and say, I want to do this, I think we could do it in probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And we're in discussions with some people that we think are gonna help with that. But really that, our challenge at this point is really, it's not really the technical. I mean, yeah, sure, the brain-computer interfaces, yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done in those. But when we think about things like targeted reinnervation and some of these non-invasive techniques, those are really things that, we're capable of doing today. And that's, that was another reason why we kind of focused on these multiple modes of control, is because we really wanted to be able to have, nearer term solutions while we're also looking at these much more, challenging longer term solutions.
Okay, I think that will conclude our broadcast. So let's have another round of applause for Mike here.
Thank you.